and a Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audiences, my dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to the East-West Show, exclusively sponsored by Wolfers, the Belgian royal family designated brand of jewelry with 400 years of history. That is hand-forged by 10 generations of the number one craftsman, which stands for a testimony to the spectacular and a share of the royal glory. That starts our show. Today with me is my dear friend, my brother by the same mother, Joe Gardner. Joe Gardner is a wonderful individual. He had been a police officer for Santa Monica PD for 27 glorious years, and he was the former candidate for California Assembly, and right now he is the chairman of the LA County Committee of Probation. So welcome, sir.
Thank you, Jack.
Show, right?
Good to be here.
With the background of the VIP guest, you probably would know what we're talking about. Plus, when you see the title of today's show, Let's Overturn the Crazy Laws, you will probably get serious about what we're going to talk about today. With the recent occurrence in Orange County, right? A guy in and out of jail for 14 times within a period of three months, right?
Yeah, terrible. Yeah, terrible case. And you're referring to Zachary Castaneda, who went on a violent killing spree.
And that's something unbearable,
Yes.
something out of the ordinary, something even out of the human imagination.
Yeah.
So, as a police officer, what do you think? What do you believe is wrong?
Well, I think this person who went on this murderous spree in Orange County in Garden Grove, probably shouldn't have been out in the community. He probably should have still been in prison. He had been arrested several times, has a very violent felony background. He's a known gang member, and he's been flash incarcerated, allowed to go time out for 10 days and then released again back into the community. And obviously the system didn't work, and he ended up out in our community and committed a terrible crime spree.
All right, very good. To be updated with my audiences, we really want to make it clear that on the news perspective, what's been reported already been reported. Everybody knows about every details of the whole thing, right? What has not been touched yet is the fact that how come this person, instead of being incarcerated, is being in jail, instead of being behind bars, is out on the street, right? And he really took the freedom, killed 4 lives and wounded 2 within a day.
Right.
And he had been, so according to, up to the point of that very day though, he had been arrested for 14 times. None of the 14 times worked.
Right. He was actually out on bail on several charges. And
Based on what would give bail?
Right, exactly. Why, if he's committed these violent offenses in the past.
Okay, let's give some definitions, okay? Back in the old days when you were a police officer, right? All right. Yeah. If you catch him, if you caught him in the first offense, what would you do? What would the law do?
Well, he'd be evaluated and determined if if a person like this was out on bail already, then you could, and if he perhaps was on probation or parole, we would get on the phone with the probation or parole officer, and most generally, if he had been out committing other crimes while he was out on bail or probation or parole, he would have gone back probably to state prison. So the system, I think, worked a lot better back in the 80s and 90s. It was pretty straightforward, and criminals would be away from our communities, and public safety would be a lot better.
So nowadays, we're saying we fail.
Yeah.
The system failed us taxpayers.
Yes.
Right?
It has.
Failed to do the job to protect us. The 4 women are not supposed to be dead.
No.
The 2 wounded were not supposed to be wounded. Right? They deserve life.
Right.
Right.
And it's a story. It repeats itself over and over again.
Yes. And yet the system allowed this. Not only the system failed to protect, the system created a law that allowed this to happen.
Right.
Anybody goes to jail to a crime of that?
It seems it's more difficult to keep someone incarcerated that really should be incarcerated. The problem is they end up going through the county jail system now more than often than not, and there's no space. So many times, if you don't take into account the criminal history of an individual before you make a decision about whether or not they should be released, then they're going to get released. It's all based on their current offense, which is a real big problem with the system. It doesn't look at what that person did in the past. It doesn't assess whether he's maybe a potential danger, he or she is a potential danger to the community. They just basically release them based on whatever.
In other words, according to the current law, at the time when he was arrested for the 14th time, no reference was made to go trace all the 13 before.
It would seem not, yeah.
It will not, right?
Right.
So for the 14, and flash the badge, flash the handcuff, and next day he's out.
Right.
It was like that.
It's not quite that quick. It's usually 10 days. Sometime within that 10-day period, somebody makes an assessment.
But do you think we, us, taxpayers, we, us, the voters, will take that for a discount?
No, yeah, I'm very appalled. I'm very concerned about the safety. We should
How
all
come
be.
we're so quiet?
Yeah, exactly.
How come there's no protest on the street?
Yeah, they should
Let's do something.
They should be marching in Sacramento.
Let's start it with Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree.
My dear friend, my lovely audiences, by the time of 2012, California has issued a law called AB 109. According to the AB 109, jail was overcrowded. They had to release the inmates out to the county jail. The county jail cries the same story, that we are overcrowded too.
Right.
So next thing is they're on the street. The early release are on the street. In spite of the fact that we taxpayers deserve protection, there is, matter of fact, nobody protects us. In addition to failure of protecting us, they let go a bunch of criminals, such as this guy, who killed 4, wounded 2 in one day, on top of his 13 felonies already. Right? In other words, we are not protected. In other words, somebody is failing. In other words, we need to do something.
Right. Absolutely. And we thought something was going to happen with the murder of Whittier Officer Keith Boyer.
Keith Boyer, yes.
There was an outcry for that, and people I thought would probably want to do something then, but unfortunately, time has passed, and still we have nothing. I think the politicians have chosen to ignore this issue.
Let's do it all together.
Right.
Yesterday, an officer died. 2 officers died, right?
Right.
2 officers, LASD officers died. Let's put them all together, the failure, to indicate the failure, right? The former governor, president governor, needs all to look at this, and somebody has to pay, somebody has to pay.
Right.
If Jim Brown has to pay, Jim Brown has to pay.
Right.
Right? So Lee Baca is serving his jail time. If Jim Brown deserves some jail time, let him do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
My dear friend, my lovely audience, we are at a critical moment. I, Jack Chow, as a media man, I would like to use this platform to do something positive to our community. Our community now is at a risk. It is a critical moment because we are not protected, because the system fails to protect us. Plus, the system made a law to make it even worse by letting out the bad guy, the killers, the murderers, the felons on the streets to worsen our day-to-day life. People die. People die of bullet. People die of daggers. People die of no reason at all. And even officers, suppose, if I'm dying, right? When the officer, why would the officer get killed, right? Like in Officer Keith Boyer, his name, he was killed for 2 years. There is no word, no nothing. Heard about it. Let's do something. My dear friend, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Everything expected and straight. It's like seeing John Wayne.
My name is Paul James. I host English News.
And a Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audiences. Welcome back to the discussion at the East-West show that is exclusively sponsored by Wolfers, the Belgium royal family designated brand of jewelry with 400 years of glorious history, with rings and everything diamonds, hand-forged by 10 generations of the master craftsmen, which altogether stand for a testimony to the spectacular and their share of royal glory. Back to the show. With me is my dear friend, Mr. Joe Gardner, a former police officer of Santa Monica PD, former candidate of California Assembly, and currently chairman of the LA County Probation Committee. We are picking the subject of right now, talking about the stabbing to death in Garden Grove of last week. And the guy's been in and out of jail for 14 times within a period of 3 months. That's altogether 90 days.
Right.
90 days.
And I could give you a breakdown of the counts here. He was out on bail for 8 counts of gang-related vandalism. He was also out on bail for possessing a bladed weapon, a knife probably. He had a domestic violence restraining order, which he violated. He was out on misdemeanor drug offenses and a suspended driver's license. And he was also on probation for felony auto theft. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this man had a significant criminal history. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the Garden Grove police chief basically said this guy shouldn't have been out. You know, he really should have been in prison because of all the stuff that he's been doing for the last few months.
Exactly, exactly. So that brings us to some logic issue. Mm-hmm. The word probation. Can you please, as the chair of the probation committee of LA County, give us a little definition of the word probation? Why people could be or are put on probation?
Well, people would be put on probation through the courts. The judge would say, you know what, you need to be supervised while you're out on probation. You know, I'm not going to send you to jail, but if you are, an offender that is not going to be incarcerated, then you should be on probation. And so I'm going to turn you over to the probation department so that you can be supervised. And you're supposed to check in there with the probation officer, and you're supposed to fulfill the requirements of your probation. Generally, that's anywhere from, a couple years to 3 years, or as long as 5 years. So you have to comply with the order of the court, and you have to obey what your probation officer tells you. In addition to that, you still have parole, state parole, through the prison system, and convicts or people that are released from state prison have to report to a parole officer to make sure that they're in compliance and they're doing what they're supposed to. They have drug testing, various things to make sure that they're not slipping back into their old habits. So, and if probation or parole officer finds that somebody is in violation, then they could be sent back to either jail in the case of a probation department, or back to state prison in the event of a parole officer. So.
All right, okay. Now for a definition though, let me try to roughly understand it.
Sure.
The worst are incarcerated.
Right.
Right. Less than the worst are put on probation to supervise, to comply with requests, reports, whatsoever. Right?
Right.
So, in other words, those are on probation are, a little better than worse ones.
Yes, in
Am I
some
right?
case, yeah, but it's not always true, because in
Is this
case,
guy any better than any other ones?
no, because he had a really significant bad history.
Sure.
And
when he was put up on probation for the first time, though, did we know why they put him on the probation for the first time, and for the second time, for the third time, all the way blah, 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 to the 5th time, he was still out on probation.
right.
What contribution has he done to California?
Right. They should ask that question. How could he go so many times, violating his probation, and still nothing happens to him? So, I think people have to really scratch that surface and figure out really what went wrong.
I believe that we have to ask some questions.
Right.
Question number one, above the legislature of California, who started the bill of AB 109?
Yeah, I would like to know that.
And who voted yes on AB 109?
Yeah, most of
Shall we find out?
Yeah, most of the...
To the public record, we should be able to find out.
Yeah, you can go there and look and pull up the bill and see
Find out,
what
right?
the votes were. Yeah.
All right. So why would these people promote this AB 109?
Yeah. I think most of it centers around money in the state prison system and the lack of resources.
Speaking of the money, where is the money?
Yeah, good question.
I believe with a system as California state, as a state though, you have to have certain money to bear the name of jail money.
Right.
Right? Who touched the jail money?
Yeah, exactly. We have 33 prisons.
Yeah.
And 2 additional private prisons in the state of California.
Okay.
And we were still having overcrowding issues.
Okay.
Where did the money go?
Who touched the jail money?
Right.
All right. If in the very beginning, in day one, there is no money of jail money, and then the governor is responsible.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't you give the jail money to refurbish, to build or rebuild or create new jails whatsoever? Because you're facing a rising population, you're facing a rising immigration, you're facing a daily expanding total population.
Right.
With a crime rate.
That's the question, and it's the one not asked by our politicians. You really should understand why we didn't put money where it had to be. If the problem was overcrowding, obviously, to me, the solution would be build more prisons, right?
Yeah.
But I don't believe in warehousing prisoners. I mean, if you're going to build prisons that are actually going to rehabilitate people, then you should focus on that. Because eventually they're going to get out, but you have to keep the public safe.
We have private business. Private business, they have warehouses. They can subcontract the warehouses to upgrade it into a prison system and to subcontract the business.
Yeah.
That saves the state money. That helps with the business enterprises, right? And that protect us people,
Right.
not to be hit, not to be killed on the street.
Right. And it's a kind of a parallel to the homeless issue, right?
Yes.
They won't respond to it until it becomes a crisis, and people now are demanding that it be declared a crisis so that it could be addressed. Well,
Now
they should
you
do the
see,
same with
okay,
crime, right?
2 weeks already. 2 weeks already. Last week and this week, and it looks that it is getting quiet down.
Right.
We are entering another quiescent of as if nothing had happened.
Right.
So what's wrong, folks? What's wrong with you, folks? All right, let's do something. Let's do something, and it is high time we did something. This something is related to you, to me, to everybody, our own life. Let's do something. All right, my dear friend, my lovely audiences, you can write to me if you are the owner or the head or the top guy, a top lady of the organization or any organization, you want to join me in the call. Let's be vocal. Let's hook up. Do you think so?
Oh, it's a great
Right?
idea.
Right, let's hook up. Let's put people on the street to protest. We want that AB 109 be overturned. Go to hell. That is the call. All right?
Right.
Okay, my dear friend, my lovely audiences, Jack Chow on the East West with my dear friend Joe Garner, former candidate for California Assembly and former Santa Monica PD officer, police officer, and now he's the current chair of LA County Committee of Probation. Let's take a short moment out. We come back. Let's find out what we want to do, what we should do, or what needed to be done. Good.
Everything is expected to be straight. It's like the same John Wayne.
My name is Paul James. I'm host of the news.
And a Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, my dear friends, my lovely audiences. Welcome back to the show. Jack Chow, your host on the East West Show that is exclusively sponsored by Wolfers, Belgium royal family designated brand with 400 years of glorious history, hand-forged by 10 generations of master craftsmen, which stands for a testimony to the spectacular and a share of the royal glory. Back to the show, though, with my friend, Mr. Joe Gardner, former candidate for California Assembly, former police officer of Santa Monica PD for 27 glorious years, especially now he's the current chair of a LA County Committee of Probation, right? So, of all your career, you being a police officer, you'll be law enforcement, right? Okay, now, I believe you're the one that I need to talk to, right? Okay. Let's find out, let's do this. Let's start our research by finding out what should be done. Okay, let me ask you as officer, if you caught this guy in the first offense, what would you do?
Well, part of the process is always to look at criminal history, to go to a computer and pull up all the database information regarding that person and find out if he's on bail or on probation or he's on parole. And if he is, then to start making some phone calls to determine what his real status is. If the probation or parole officer, wasn't aware that he's out there committing other crimes or he's on bail for some other things, then it's my opportunity to tell that probation officer or parole officer, hey, your guy is really slipping up here, and I arrested him today for this or that. What would you like to do with him? It's an opportunity for me to be persuasive, right? And maybe talk to the probation or parole officer and say, really, this guy's a problem.
If you find this guy for the first offense, though, to trace with no previous felonies, right? And there's like a brand new guy. You're handling a brand new guy, though. What's your procedure from that starting point?
Then all you can do is focus on the charges that you have that day, right? Whatever you arrested him for.
In other words, what you arrest him for.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And then you decide whether or not you're going to charge him for that offense. There are a lot of things you have to consider, whether or not the victim, if there is a victim, is willing to prosecute. If it's an offense not really involving a victim, like maybe possession of a firearm, and they might be a felon who shouldn't be possessing firearms, then you want to charge him for that. And any and all other violations that he might have. We want to check him into the national system. Right? You want to see if he's
you're right.
not wanted in Oklahoma for something or something else. So it's an involved process. It takes a couple hours to really go and make a good assessment about somebody that you might have in your custody.
And then, if the court decides to give this guy probation, assign him a probation officer to be in charge, it's your duty to hand it over to them, right?
Right. Well, to the DA's office, or if it's a misdemeanor crime, maybe to the city attorney, and they have to decide what they're going to do. And they're the ones that go on behalf of the police department, on behalf of the people, and voice their concerns about this particular individual. So it's kind of out of the hands of the police at that point. But you advocate. If you're a good police officer, you're going to advocate for something to be done, especially if the person would benefit from some alternative. Maybe his core problem is he's an alcoholic or drug offender, right? You want to send him to drug rehab. Maybe that's more beneficial than
Again,
jail.
back to you. In his case, 5 days later, you call this guy again,
Right.
Which was the second offense,
Right.
And you, of course, you were the one to go through the previous, find out through previous record, say, that's the guy, right?
Right.
And then what would you do?
I'd make some phone calls. I'd really try and convince, if it's a parole officer or probation officer, that really something needs to be done here. So I would take the opportunity, exploit the opportunity to really make my voice heard at that point. And it happens all the time. Officers, want to make sure the community's safe.
All right.
That's their job. So they'll
Supposing
advocate.
the whole process of the 13 till he committed the 14th, though, it was the same officer like you, and the same probation officer who made the decision all the way up, right? Yeah. Okay, now, just assume the two of you. At the very end, you as a cop, as a police officer, did your job, arrest him each time you go trace before, each time you did make your recommendation to the court and to the probation, this is a very risky guy, so on and so forth. And it was the same probation officer decided to let him go over and over again. Do you think either you or him needs to be responsible?
Yeah, I've been in that position where I've had to call that supervisor of that probation or parole officer and really say, hey, you know what, your guy here, he's not really looking at this seriously. I've been in that position to have to escalate the call, as we call it in the consumer world, right? You escalate the call to the next man in charge to try and convince them that maybe something really should be done. You know, at one point or the other, you have to just decide, can I sleep at night knowing that I did everything I could? And oftentimes that's the policy or procedure I would use to really get this point across.
So, you know, 90 days divided by 14. Let's see how much. You have a calculator on there?
Oh, no, I sure don't.
Huh? Yeah, let's see. Yeah, nowadays nobody uses this way.
Yeah.
Let's find out. About 5 or 6 days, probably.
Yeah. Here.
Right? Let's see. 90, right? Divided by 14. I was right. 6.4.
Right. Average
Not
time.
even a week. Right? Okay, now, in the system does not recognize some guy visiting, revisit in a frequency of an average of 6.4 days.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. You have to think what happened along the way here. Who failed to do their job, you know?
All right. Suppose in this case, though, as an officer, you did your job.
Right.
You did a full 10s of your recommendations, right? A probation officer from the probation department, they gave him again and again the free ride. Anybody to be held responsible.
Right. And you know, that probation officer could decide for himself to go to his supervisor and say, you know what, we really need to do something about this guy. You know, but if his supervisor doesn't agree, then what then? So,
and then the supervisor goes to jail. How about that?
Yeah, well.
Because you're talking about 4 lives lost. Somebody has to pay for the 4 lives, right?
There should be accountability and responsibility for
Of
what
course. Responsibility is one thing, accountability is the other.
Yep.
And after all, at the end of the day, we're talking about 4 lives, king alive like myself, all of a sudden deceased.
What do you say to the victims?
Yeah,
and what do you
sure.
say to the families
Of course.
that were impacted
Of
by this
course.
terrible crime?
And I mean, all the way up the ladder of the hierarchy whatsoever, somebody has to be responsible, be held responsible
Yeah,
for the death.
right.
Okay, anybody goes to jail.
Yeah, I mean, somebody should be either fired or what?
Of course, at least.
We always refer to everything as the system failed. You know, we talk about the state legislature or the criminal justice system, but we don't really get down to the brass tacks about what happened within the system.
System is one thing.
Right.
System is a formation of every individuals who is supposed to do the job.
Right. Exactly.
Am I right?
And we ought to delve into those details.
Suppose that the probation officer, he himself stood alone saying, regardless whatever you do with AB 109, regardless how serious you cry about jail over overcrowding whatsoever, this guy needs to be in jail, or I quit.
Right. There should be some strong vocal, announcement to that effect.
All right? And this guy needs to be in jail, or you free him, go across my dead body. That's it.
Right.
Right? Should there be a hero like that? Well, these 4 women would not die.
Yeah. There are probably many heroes. In this particular case, maybe they are heroes, but they just couldn't get their voice across.
And the Officer Boyer would not die.
Right.
If there's any hero like that.
Right.
Right. My dear friends, my loved audience, it is time we do something. It is high time we did something already. Stay with us. We'll be right back, please.
Everything is expected and straight. It's like seems wrong way.
My name is Paul James. I host this news
and the Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, my dear friend, my lovely audiences. Welcome back to the show. Jack Chow, your host on the East West, which is exclusively sponsored by Wolfers, the Belgian royal family designated brand of jewelry that has 400 years of glorious history. And that is hand forged by 10 generations of the master craftsman, which stands for a spectacular, the testimony of spectacular and a share of royal glory. Back to the show with my friend, dear brother Joe Garner, who has been a loyal member of service to the community for so many years in Santa Monica PD for 27 and retired with the Valley of Queen of the Valley Hospital, right?
Meals on
Where
Wheels.
you were operating the Meals on Wheels for how many years?
6 years.
6 years on top, and also he's been the chairman of the LA County Probation Committee for how many years?
That's about 6 years as well.
All right, good. All right. So altogether, you're talking about a man who's been serving this community for almost 30, 40 years. And he is still upload his knowledge to the system, which we say failed. Of course the system has failed. But in the system, what do we have? That's my question.
We have people.
If people are like you, in the system, if we still have people, everybody acts like you do, would that be the case? Would that be the tragedy?
Yes, Jack, as I said before.
Would that be the death of Officer Keith Boyer?
Yeah, it would be. We look at.
Would that be the death of the San Francisco officer?
Yeah.
And the two officers who died on duty at a vehicle check only.
Right.
Only yesterday.
Yeah, the CHP officer that passed away.
CHP officer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're terrible tragedies, and we should really look into the details and the people that maybe had some background or some history with these murderous suspects, the people that that cause these horrific crimes. We should find out where the system failed. And I hate to use the word system. We should really say where maybe some people might have failed to really keep some of these hardened criminals off the street.
And never mind, brother. I'm coming to your comfort. Never worry, because it is the system. Yeah. If nothing wrong with the system, as a system, there wouldn't be the birth of AB 109.
You're correct.
Yeah, and the AB 109. Okay, my dear audience, AB 109 is the call, the trumpet, ba, 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 da, like that, right? Okay, to release the criminals out of jail onto the street. All right, followed by Proposition 47, which by law, in the name of law, shame on them, in the name of law, made coming back to jail higher shredder, right? Higher threshold. So instead of at $400 level, you go back for stealing, and they raised for 950.
Right.
Right? 950. They raised it, so you guys, okay, just to try to make sure you steal something below $950 and you're okay. Right?
Right. I think the pendulum needs to swing the other way.
Yeah, that's Proposition 47. All right? And Proposition 57 made the flash incarceration, and you come in, okay, we arrest you, handcuffed, and the next scene, you're out on the street. We flash our badge, and that is the whole thing. Right. So now, you were worried about the saying whether the system or not. I comfort you, say, hey, no, please, feel free. I believe, I'm 100% sure the system is totally corrupt. Yeah. Totally corrupted. Otherwise, wouldn't have produced this.
Right.
AB 109.
No, it's a broken system. You had a lot of people who have consistently wanted to undermine the criminal justice system in California. And so now this is what we're left with. You know, I don't know what the intentions were. Some of it were cost-saving measures, you know, to clear out the prisons because it was getting too expensive, instead of doing the right thing about building more prisons to take care of the public and keep criminals away from our communities. So they failed there. You know, moving them to county jail and never giving them the money to take on the extra load of a population of prisoners, that was a huge mistake.
What we're talking about was predicted by a great man, Kurt Hageman. You know Kurt Hageman, right?
Yes, absolutely.
By Kurt Hageman 10 years ago.
Right.
10 years ago, I interviewed him about the California jail system. You know what he recommended? He says the jail is going to be busted anyway, sooner or later. We have more inmates than jail, all right? And then he, at that very time, when he just was elected to the assembly, though, he was trying so hard to convince people there, the lawmakers, to let go the jail thing, to subcontract with the private business by using their facilities whatsoever to reduce the pressure till someday something worse happened.
Right.
And of course that was rejected. By the way, I interviewed him on Monday, past Monday.
No.
And we mentioned that, right? So now everything is happening.
Right.
Right. Now, if the system has not been wrong, his proposal would have been adopted. The jail crowd will be prevented. The contract and the subcontract thing, the chain will establish.
The problem we have in California is a tangled mess. I mean, with the prison system, you have labor involved heavily in political activity, really advocating to keep things status quo, keep things the way that they would like it. Throughout the whole system of politics,
You're right.
It's a tangled mess of corruption.
If the issue is there, I can drag it over anytime.
Right.
When I need it.
Right.
The same happens with homeless. With homeless. Do you think
We have a cottage
sure.
industry on
All
homeless.
right, yeah, all right.
Nonprofits really make a lot of money off
They
it.
use that, yes, you're right. They use that as a handle.
Right.
Every time they want to make an issue, they drag it over. See, we have a hygiene problem. See, we have the development problem.
Give me some more money.
Give me some more money.
Yeah.
And then people on the other aisle says, on the other side of an aisle, would like that to be there too, because every time they can drag it over, use that as a weapon to fight over the other side.
Right.
So
Why can't we just do things because they're right to do, right? How come
why
we can't
can't
fix,
we do something?
No, we need to be responsible and do the right thing, and I don't see that as much in our system of government and politics.
I really hate the one thing that I'm too small. If I'm big enough, I will create this protest on the street as early as this afternoon. Let's overturn AB 109. That crazy law cannot go on. It must die. And Proposition 47, and that crazy law, it must go, it must die. Proposition 57, that is a crazy law, it must go, it must die. Let's do something, my dear friend. And write it to me, tellmydj@gmail.com, tellmydj@gmail.com, or you can write it to me, jack@edimediainc.com, jack@edimediainc.com. We'll see what we can do. If you are leader of or certain organization, right, who is concerned or are concerned about public safety, about the continuing early release of criminals who will kill more people like this guy did, right? Please write to me, all right? My dear brothers and sisters, thank you very much for watching. And to Joe, thank you. I really appreciate it.